Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unfiltered Vet Discussions. We are glad to have you here because you know what? We're having a really good time today. So in between recording sessions, we are laughing and enjoying ourselves, and hopefully you can enjoy in the enthusiasm that we bring to the table today. So the conversation that we would like to present is social media and being influenced by social media. And that changes by who you are as an individual and also the generation that you were born into. It's very different. And also, are you a client or are you an owner? And that changes depending on how you shop, where you go, different aspects in your life. We wear both hats many times. So I'm going to throw that out to the floor today as influential by social media and how we see that. I guess I'll start because something just popped in my head. Is my daughter, since I'm in a marketing company, is always like, Mom, can you just stop telling me what these influencers are trying to do for me? Like, now I don't want to buy anything from them. And I'm like, that was the whole entire point of that conversation. Yes, you grasp what I was putting down. Yes, they are trying to sell you something. Yes, that is exactly it. And be careful of what you're buying and why you're buying it and how you're being influenced. I mean, so that's a prime example of social media. And she thinks I'm ruining part of her child life. I think I'm saving her. So, that's a generational thing. What else is everybody else seeing out there?
So
Oh yeah,
I will, oh, go ahead, David.
I was just going to say, because my kids are a similar age, and we have more G Fuel and this seltzer and that electronic device because somebody on YouTube or TikTok recommended it, and they're honest. They're telling the truth. They're not paid to do that. They just really like it. Like, no, guys, pull back the curtain and look at the odds because you're being sold. And they haven't quite grabbed that yet. And I think, and maybe now they're 18 now, so they're a little sharper. But back when they were 12, 13, Minecraft and all the gaming and it's out there.
So
But
what I
they're
was gonna,
honest.
they're honest every time. So what I was gonna say is mine is a little bit more serious in that 3 years ago, my now oldest child, who was a freshman in high school, almost exactly 3 years ago at the end of this month, and beginning of October, ended up in a mental institution. They, they're non-binary, they, unbeknownst to me, started their own email account, started their own TikTok account. And I had always warned, like, no social media. Yes, you can have a phone, no social media, because I knew, like, it messes with your head. And that's exactly what happened. And complete strangers were telling them to kill themselves. Were telling them to kill us as parents. I mean, it was just so bizarre. And then they ended up in a mental institution. And I was driving the hour down to Boston because that's where they were hospitalized at most. And as I'm driving, I'm listening to NPR because that's what I listen to. And lo and behold, a study had just come out that social media was targeting adolescent girls and causing them mental harm knowingly. And then the next thing you know, Zuckerberg's, in front of, the courts and all this. And I'm listening to this and I wanted to be like, I'm going to send you a picture of my kid, because this is what social media influencers, like, this is the influence that happens. So now we're like the opposite, where, like, when my oldest got a new phone, they were like, Mom, take all the social media sites off of there. I don't want them. Take them off. Like, in a panic. So I had to uninstall because they automatically come installed, right? Everything comes installed. Your Instagram comes installed. Your Snapchat comes installed, your Facebook, all of it. So I have to uninstall everything. And then they're like, okay, I can have my phone now, because they're so afraid of it. So it's like, how do we get to that middle ground where instead of going with everything that these people who don't know you are telling you. Like, how do we teach? I don't know. How do we teach adults? There's so many adults that, David, you're talking about buying everything. Oh my gosh, I've got people, my team members, I'm like, where did you hear that from? Oh, TikTok. That is not a news source. I'm sorry. That is not where you get I don't know, how do you combat it? I don't know.
Too late. The number one search engine for the TikTok generation, which are millennials and Gen Zs, is TikTok.
Well, the
Past
problem
Google, past YouTube.
and the problem is that actually there is some really good stuff on TikTok. It's not like it's all bad. If it was all bad,
Yeah.
no one would like it. But there is some really good stuff in there. And from real people sharing things around the world that from their real person vantage point, that you start to feel this trust, like it's genuine, it's authentic, it's not going through all these filters, much like this podcast, and it's not produced. And I think that's part of this appeal for sure. But then you sprinkle in or dump in the people that take advantage of the situation, and then it gets really hard to tell what's fake, what's real. I don't know. I'm definitely on TikTok, and I find myself getting addicted, or like I'm sucked into it, and the algorithms are so good, and I find myself referencing TikToks in many conversations and sending different ones to my friends. Oh, here's how to improve your golf swing. Here's a funny joke about animals. Here's a cute cat thing. And then of course, like, oh yeah, that's a cute sweater, I'll buy it.
Well, and just what you mentioned, because I see it at home, swipe, swipe, swipe. It seems like people are not good being alone. As soon as you are alone, the phone comes out and you're swiping, snaps or ticks or whatever. That's the personal distraction device, keeping you engaged with those 5-second, 10-second, 15-second swipe, swipe, swipe. And the hours of the day just go by and you don't notice. Nobody picks up on that.
It's TikTok and Instagram for the younger folks, but isn't for many of us in our generation, isn't it? Email and Slack and
Facebook.
It's like I think you hit the nail on the head, David. My perspective is you're avoiding your own quiet thinking mind. You don't want to really deal with what you need to deal with. Maybe it's a lot of work to look in the mirror.
You guys are so freaking young. We had ABC, NBC, and 2 local networks and public television. We had newspapers. The news was news, not commercialized news. You got the social stuff from school in the lunchroom or waiting to go into class. It is PDA was not a personal digital assistant. It was a public display of affection. And so it is, and many times I long to go back to a simpler time when the distraction was reading, when the distraction was playing chess or a weekend game of Monopoly because there was just no way to get it done, or the family Scrabble game, or even the family poker game. So we have lost the battle to the social media mavens that are out there, and it's our fault, because how many of you gave your kids a device or turned on the TV to distract them? My kids watched Barney growing up and Teletubbies, because we weren't as into the social media, the devices that at that point in time. But how much have we created this? Let's not blame the kids for the outcome. Let's blame us for the cause.
Peter, I've been seeing when the little time on Instagram, speaking an algorithm, and I don't know how I got on this algorithm. There's a whole push by younger parents right now to get off screen time. So like even their names are like no screen time kid, or things like that. And then what they're posting is ideas to keep your kids busy. So they're like not going on the screen. So I think there's all of a sudden, compared to what you said, I think there's a backlash movement starting out there with young parents, under 5.
When it's easy to do, because there's no peer pressure on those kids to get a phone. When you're 5, 6, you still have control, you still have authority. You can distract them with real world. But I'd like to see these folks in another 7, 8 years. I mean, maybe it can work, but it's a teen and 5th grade, 6th grade, 8th, 10th. It's going to get a lot harder to separate.
It can work.
It's worth
my
trying,
kids,
I think.
My kids now don't get, so my son, thanks to my oldest, now I'm way more afraid of, not afraid, but just cautious. So my son did not get a phone until right before he went to New York City with his class trip in 8th grade. And I did that because I wanted him to be able to take pictures, and I wanted to know where he was in New York City when he's, the student to teacher ratio was less. And, but he got in trouble during class for reading all the time. That was what he got in trouble for, to the point where he would be like, Mom, the teachers took my books away. And it's funny because I'm like, well, if that's the biggest problem that we have, then by God, I'm going to take it, but the pressure was serious. I had to talk to the teachers and say, I'm not giving him a phone. So if you want to send something, get him, I will pass the message along, but he's not going to get a phone. And now my 10-year-old's going through the same thing. She's in 6th grade. Mom, all my friends have phones. I'm the only one that doesn't have a phone. I'm like, okay, too bad. And it is a battle. It is a battle. It's ugly. It's a battle, but we're better off for it, because you know what? On the weekends, I'm like, go outside and find a stick. You're not sitting inside playing on your damn phone. Go, leave me alone. And it works. Bill, what have you done with your kids?
Well, what I was going to say before even getting into, my kids, is as somebody in long-term recovery, like the reaction in our brains is the same as, if I take a shot of vodka, or I take a drag off of a cigarette, our process addictions, like if I eat, a row of Oreos, or what, we all have these, sex, all of these types of process addictions. Social media is one of those things. And one of the things that it allows us to do too, what we also don't talk about is a little bit of the narcissism, is that when we're engaging in social media, a lot of times we're talking about ourselves. And like when we post something good about ourselves and then we get likes, woo, like that jacks us up. And it's something just like any of those other things, and Stacee alluded to this, is that, if something's going on, like I can change the way I feel by going on social media. Like if I start going through and watching funny TikToks, or I, do this, whatever it is, it's a way, without using the tools of reflection and some of the things that are a little harder. It's a way for me to change the way that I feel like that. And so what I'll say is that in our house, that's what we do try to do. We have limits, we have time limits on what the kids can do, but it's still, the thing is it's whether, if it's, potentially it's all or nothing, but how do you not be involved with social media, in this, when, we talk about it like with LinkedIn or, anything like that. And our friend Andy Rourke, like he and I talk about this all the time, is like, we used to be think, oh, well, LinkedIn's, there's no politics and, anything. And it's like positive stuff. And I would get on there and then I'd be all of a sudden, like I'm Googling like different certifications and all this stuff. And I'm like, and I'm feeling anxious and I'm like, what's going on? And it's because like 4 posts up, somebody else that does what I do, or what posted that they were doing this thing. And then it's like, without even knowing it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not doing enough, and then it has the opposite effect, and then and again, I'm seeing everybody else's, highlight reel, and I'm comparing it to, me on a day-to-day basis, which is never going to win. But anyhow, it's just, I think it's important to know also is like genuinely like it's not being over the top to compare, you know, the impact that we have when we're on social media to other things and behaviors that we use, you know, to change the way that we feel as quickly as we can. So just putting that out
So,
there.
so with that in mind,
Yeah.
and the known addictive effect of things like cigarettes and alcohol and everything else.
Yeah.
Should the government take a stronger position in the control of social media because of the somewhat proven impact that it has on our brains in the same way,
Yeah.
or is that a violation of the First Amendment?
I mean, well, I don't know about the First Amendment, but well, where I would say is, I mean, it's very much like smoking, you know, is like saying, hey, we, you know, they said for years they didn't know, oh, we did, you know, it's not addictive, it's not, but they knew. And it's like, we all know, we know that. And then looking at the adolescent brain, I mean, not to get too much in the politics, I feel like most of us, like something needs to be done, but the just say what I will say is when it comes to anything addictive, just say no. Like Nancy Reagan's shtick doesn't work because that stuff doesn't work. Like you can't, it's like, oh, just say no to thank you. That would have saved me, you know, 20 years of you know, of a rough go if I just said no, thanks, Nancy. But just seriously though, is that yeah, I mean, I do believe whether it's regulation, you know, is another, you know, discussion that we can have, but should more things be, should we invest more into education, awareness, and prevention? Yeah, 100%.
But do
I
they,
know in Florida,
sorry, Phil, I thought
does
you
who
were done.
want to? No, sorry. Does who want to though? You
Does
said
the
do they
greater
want?
like individually, you're like, let's put a warning sign on it. But what comes to my head, for example, is I ride Delta because I'm out of a Delta hub here. Delta was one of the first who put the screens behind the seats, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of girl who has to get up mid-flight to use the restroom. Like, just has to happen. And I also will talk to anybody who moves. So when those came out, I'm just like chatty. So I'm back there doing the potty dance, waiting for my turn, talking to the stewardess. And I looked and I turned around and I look up the flight to all the screens, what everybody's watching. And I'm like, and I've been on flights back when I was flying in out of New York, where cops came on and took people off kicking and screaming, like, you know, full out brawl type of situation. There's not a sound. And I look at the flight attendant and I'm like, wow, it's so quiet. And she goes, our disturbances on the flights have plummeted because people are zoned out. They're
It's the
nannying
pacifier.
through the digital screen, right? They said our lives have improved so much as flight attendants because all these people aren't crabby at me. And I just sat and looked and I'm like, you're right. So when you pacify somebody through social media, when you pacify us through our phones, is there an exterior benefit to the greater society? I'm not saying I just have the question of, because that way goes into politics and things like that. But when you pacify your child with a screen at home so that you can have a 15-minute hot bath or make dinner or get some laundry done, write something on the to-do list. When you have people full of airplanes who you're not calling cops for anymore because they're not raising a fuss. Like, where do we want to be controlled as individuals? How do we want to be controlled as individuals? How do we want to be pacified? Because can we self-soothe ourselves? For me, it's a book. Like, you put me in a book, just probably like your son, Jenni, I'm a happy camper. Like, I will tune out the world around me. I wouldn't know that there's things going on. So that's like a greater question than we may have today because we're getting to the end of it, but it's something worth to contemplate.
And you match that with your noise canceling AirPods. You are in your own world, man.
I forgot about those, Stacee, but you're right. Like,
So I just have a question for Jenni. Your son got into trouble for reading in class. Is that what you said?
Yes.
And How about I bet that you got into trouble for talking in class?
Yes, I was. How did you know? I also got in trouble
Did
for
I
reading
know?
in class and talking in class. Here, with regards to social media, though, I guess my issue is who called it media? Because I think that's why people think that this is where you get your news from, and it shouldn't be. Like, it should just be a social network,
There's
not
nowhere to
social.
get your news from, though. It's all produced
Yeah.
and biased. And I mean, it is really hard to find unbiased reporting in today's world
Mhm.
anywhere,
Right.
in my opinion.
I'm with
You're right.
Stacey. I have to go overseas to find how people think about the United States.
Yeah.
Well, and if you look at the definition of media, it's really just any means of mass communication.
Yeah, you're right.
It is
You're right.
it's a challenging situation, and half the people are going to get onto this podcast and think we're going to talk about how to use social media to promote their practice, because that's what people think. And what we're really talking about is the importance of social media and its influence on everything that we touch, everything that we think. Ladies and gentlemen, we are Pinocchio and social media is Geppetto and somebody pulling our strings. How do we cut the strings so that we can get our lives back and the lives of our children back in the future? Because otherwise, we may live in a democracy, but I'm not sure we're actually the ones who have the ultimate decision.
And
It
with
all
that,
comes
we are
down
gonna,
to, as so many of our sessions do, self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
Flip the switch.
well, thank you all for joining us today. If you have thoughts and feelings about social media, please share with us in the comments. Until the next time on Unfiltered Vet Discussions, we look forward to hearing from you. The royal waves are coming out. Talk to you later, everyone.